Woo! Mind Taker. That's right. Long anticipated, often requested. I finally give the people what they demand. Your main man reviews Psionics. It Dungeons and Dragons. Today, let's just start it off right there. Expanded Psionics Handbook. Boom! Boom, boom, boom. Shake the room. This is actually a very, very well done book. It expanded on the 3.0 rules for Psionics, which I also have. Now, Psionics, we really see them start off in Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. And everyone remembers the Complete Psionics Handbook for AD&D 2nd Edition. Thanks for that one, AD&D 2nd Edition. One of, if not the worst books ever written for the Dungeons and Dragons, Advanced Dungeons and Dragons line. Terrible. And people hated Psionics after that for like a various number of reasons. But the skill system for Psionics, the system for it was confusing. It was odd. It was goofy. And yes, two of you out there could go, I like it. I don't like it. You didn't understand. Well, no, you don't understand. How about that? How do you like that now? That's right, you piece of trash. You don't understand, and you're not going to understand. Now, AD&D 2nd Edition profaned Psionics in such a dreadful way that a lot of people to this day will go, oh, you can't play a Psionics in my game. In 3.0, 3.5, Pathfinder, Psionics work wonderfully. They are way better done than either clerics or wizards by like an astronomical amount, or sorcerers. Way better. Way better. They are the absolute best magic, if we could call Psionics magic, because, I mean, it's magic. Best done casting class out there. Big problem with Psionics is they have too many magic spells. Like, they just have the same magic spell at the same level. It does essentially the same thing. And you're like, a lot of creativity there, isn't it? Oh, it's Psionic Flight. Oh, Psionic Flight. You know, even under that, it sounds kind of really? So, I'm not a huge fan of that particular idea there. Let me see if I can find one thing. So I really want to keep it more in that 3.5 tip, because that's really where Psionics come into bloom. The AD&D Psionics were terrible. I thought the Wild Talent deal with Dark Sun was kind of interesting, because it gave your character a kind of an extra bit of power in a world that you really needed it. And you had Dark Sun was very weird, because you had more power here and less power here. It was interesting. But one of the powers you had was that random Sonic ability, or the possibility of random Sonics. So, depending on how your game master wanted to do that. Psionics, a lot of them basically sort of meta-magic themselves, but there are additional meta-magic, or maybe it's meta-sonic abilities you can bring in. The only thing I don't like about them is they look way too similar to wizards. I mean, way too similar. Their system for casting is different, but the actual effects they produce is similar. I would strongly suggest using a lot of these styles for an AD&D wizard or cleric. They, plain and simple, work better. And better. So, do better, be better, use rules that are better. And Psionics are broken down into several classes. The Psion, which is, again, very similar to a wizard. There's a bunch of subcategories of Psion. I'm not going to go over all of them, because, you can pick the books up and read that sort of thing yourself. But, you have some that specialize in being able to move or in attacking, things like that. And the other Psi crystals, which kind of take the place. They're different than familiars, but they kind of go sort of, I don't want to get into it, but there's some similarities there just in terms of the place. Then you have a Sonic Warrior, which is like your Hexblade, I guess. It's not really a Paladin, because he can't fight in the same way a Paladin can, but then maybe it's more of a Hexblade, I guess. I think that's probably a more fair way to view it, like a Hexblade is to a wizard. The Sonic Warrior is to a Psionicist. They have a Soul Knife, which is a little odd, because the Soul Knife, I mean, let's face it, the Soul Knife is a Marvel Comics character. You're taking a Marvel Comics concept of, what the hell is the character's name? I don't remember. But that's clearly in my mind where this came from. They also really smell kind of Jedi-like as well. So those are kind of things to keep in mind. Their one of those classes that can be kind of weird to PRC as well, because they have so many special abilities that it can be kind of a weird deal. Like, I think there's some wonky combinations you can make with them, but it's not like just taking the base Sonic. And they have a Wilder, which is kind of like their version of a sorcerer, I guess. But I think you can kind of take a character if you want to make someone whose mind had cracked under the pressure of learning Sonics and so forth, and had that brain shatter, and use that concept to run a Wilder. Overall, I like the Sonicist. I think if you use them in a way where they're kind of set apart and they're special, they can be interesting. Or if you use them as the wizards in a campaign, so you're building a campaign where you're like, okay, there's no wizards or clerics, but you can play a Sonicist. That's a normal deal, or a fighter, or a rogue, or whatever. You know, you could easily make Sonic bards. You could take a bard and just strip magic out and just add a bunch of Sonic abilities to the bard, and they would work just fine. You do the same thing with a paladin. You do the same thing with a ranger, and all those things would be fine. You can use a random Sonic ability and add that for characters, let characters buy that up with feats. That can be interesting. There are a number of different species in the book that use the Sonics. The Mind Flayer, who we all know and love. The Aboleth. I believe there's Sonic Beholders in here as well. Sonic Liches. Things like that. Maybe a Sonic Dracolich. And he fears this. That's the hand that threatens doom, my friend. He fears it, and so should you. Now, I think that they work out pretty interesting because you do have the power points, and you can spin those up to your caster level. Like your first level Sonic power is going to cost you 1. Your third level would cost you, or your second level would cost you like 3. So it stacks the same way sort of a wizard does. But if you get higher, a lot of them have built-in extra abilities. Like maybe you can make this one last longer or get more effect out of it. Or maybe even, I think some of them you could even quicken with more and more points. And I believe there's some feats you can buy to like knock the amount of points you have to spend down. And I believe the first one, like you take damage if you over channel, which is neat. I'm a fan of that concept. Cinematically, it works very well. You watch it, and then you start like Firestarter bleeding out of your nose. And think about all those sort of movies, like a Firestarter, and bring those sort of concepts in instead of the medieval witch or the Merlin type character. You can bring in this person who's more like a Zen Buddhist or something perhaps Eastern for an Oriental adventure type game. I think a Sonicist would fit in very well. I think that for a game that has sort of a sci-fi edge to it, they can play much better than your typical wizard. If you wanted to use like a Star Wars type of game, that sort of universe, but with more of a D&D flavor to it, a Psionicist would work real well. If you wanted to build your own Jedis, the Psionicist work well for that. The Soul Knife is a great place to start. You might want to make a tweak here or there, but they're a great place to start to actually making a Jedi. The classes themselves, do have some abilities to perhaps get a little strong, and I saw that definitely in Pathfinder as well. The characters do have opportunity to become pretty potent psionicist of any type, and that's something that you want to keep in mind when you're comparing the different classes. So overall, I would probably give them a slight edge on the strength psionicists over your wizards or your clerics or your other like fighting type classes outside of maybe a Duskblade, which is a very strong class. And that's something you might want to keep in mind. But at the same time, they're not that ridiculous, but they're strong. These are not mid-level to weak classes. This ain't the Bard. I'll tell you that right now. These are pretty potent characters, and that's something that you want to think about. But you want to think about how they're going to be flavored in your world. What's the ecology you're going to use to include psionicists? They could be very different, but they might be the ones that speak to the world, that speak to nature, the spirit of the earth. They might be the ones who aliens are contacting them through their heads, through their minds. They may be the cultists of Beholders or Aboleths or Mind Flayers or Ric Flair. You don't know what kind of devious villain might be inspiring the shenanigans behind their mind workings. So when you embellish and flesh that out, don't be afraid to put that weird sort of sci-fi meets fantasy aspect on them and leave them there. And that can be a great, interesting spotlight to develop on the characters. So that's your main man talking about Psionicist. AD&D sucks. The 3.5 version, the Pathfinder version, much better. So check them out, use them, give them a thought. the non-Vancian aspect of the class makes them much better than the Vancian versions of clerics and wizards and so forth. So let me know what you think about those psionicists. Please, God, for the love of God, don't try to defend second edition Psionics. Two of you out there who go, it's great, everything AD&D did was great. It's not true. That doesn't mean that everything they did was bad. Just sometimes. All right, guys. Let me know and keep the conversation flowing like water in the comment section below, baby. Woo!